everyone, it's Lisa here, and today we're going to be creating a sweet little scene card using the Celebrate You stamp set, and I've been dying to ink this up ever since I got it, so let's get started. We're going to start off by stamping our images, so I'm using just 3 from the set: the bird that sits in the leaves and the flowers, the little tag, and also the heart. As we're going to be doing some Copic colouring on these images, I'm using an alcohol marker friendly ink, that is Memento Tuxedo Black, and I'm stamping onto Nina Classic Crest Solar White cardstock, the £80 version. So I do go ahead and do a double stamp. I do this with most of my images. It did stamp perfectly first time, but it's a bit of a habit of mine, so I went ahead and did a double stamp anyway. And of course, because I thought I'd finished the stamping, I then realised that I didn't stamp the little HB2U into the tag, so I just grabbed that from the set, and I'm now trying to line it up in the tag. And boy oh boy, this took a while. I don't know if anyone else has this problem with little rubber stamps. They just stick to my hands and made it really difficult to line it up, but I did get there in the end, and I did also stamp that with some Memento Tuxedo Black. So we're going to start our colouring now, and I'm going to start off with the leaves, and I'm using 3 different greens for that. The caps are in the top left, as you can see. Now I colour from dark to light. There's no right or wrong way to colour. You can go light to dark if you want, but I prefer to go dark to light most of the time. Sometimes I do change it up a bit. It depends on the image, maybe the size of the bit that I'm colouring. I sometimes think I don't want to oversaturate the paper, so I start with my lightest and work into dark. But for most of the colouring here today, I go dark to light. So I'm just putting my YG17 into all the areas that I want to be the darkest part. And I will speed the colouring up a little bit here because it did take me a while to colour this image. I don't want you to sit here forever watching me colour, but I'm now going in with my second darkest shade, which is YG03, and I'm going over all of the parts that I coloured with the YG17. So I am overlapping and blending that out a little bit at the same time. And I'm finishing off now with my lightest shade, which is YG01, and I'm going over the whole image just to blend that out completely. It's one of my favourite combinations for leaves. All of the colours blend really well together. And I noticed that I had a little bit of green outside of the line, so I'm just taking my colourless blender here and just moving across it until I get rid of that colour. We're going to move on to the bird now, and I'm going to use some browns for the bird. I've got 4 markers. You can see the caps there. This is another combination that I absolutely love. The colours do blend well together. There's the E55 and the E53 take a little bit more work, but I really like the end result of those 4 markers, so I use them often. So I'm going in here in exactly the same way and adding the darkest shade into all of the darkest areas, at least in my mind. And I'm now going to go over that with the E55 and start blending it out. And I had this horrible feeling my E55 was going to blob on me as I just refilled it. So I took some of the excess out of the nib and carried on blending through to my lightest colour. Now when I colour, I don't really colour as if I have a light source. I suppose subconsciously I think it's in the top right. So the darkest areas of my images are going to be on the left and the lightest on the right. But I'm not prescriptive about it. I just really colour for fun and just to try and give my images some kind of interest. And I realised I hadn't done those leaves, so just use the YG03 and YG01 on those, tidying up with the colourless blender. And for my flower centres, I use Y08 and Y19. So we're going to move on now to the flowers. For two of the flowers, I colour them in purples, and this is one of my favourite purple combinations. I often switch out BV02 for BV01. They are actually really similar, but for today I went with the BV02. So my process is the same, darkest to lightest, and then just blending out all the way. Now with the flowers, I do go back in with a little bit more of my darkest shade just to give a bit more definition. These purples are just so pretty. I really don't know why I don't use them more. I often do pink for flowers, and I do a pink here in the image, but I really love these purples and I definitely need to use them more often than I do. So we're going to do our final flower now in pinks. I've put the marker numbers up there as they weren't easy to read, and I often use RV14 and 13, but I don't think I've ever combined them with RV29, and it's a really good blend. They all blended really well together, and I got this gorgeous rich pink, so I need to make a note of that and try that combination again. And I'm just finishing with a little bit more RV29 in the centre of that flower. So for the tag, I'm just going to use two of the same browns that I used earlier, E53 and E51, just to give that a little bit of colour. I blend it out with a colourless blender so it's not too stark, and that finishes the colouring. I've now taken the coordinating paradise and I'm just taping those down with some low tack tape, and I'm going to run those through my die cutting machine. So that is those all cut out and finished, and I'll set those to one side whilst we work on our background, and for that I'm going to be doing some stenciling and some ink blending. I'm going to start by taping my A2 panel to the back of a circle masking stencil. This one is actually from Tailored Expressions, but MFT do them as well, and I'm sure other companies have bought them out. They're really handy. They have etched lines which allow you to line up your panel really easily and ensure that your circle or rectangle or heart or whatever you're using is central on your panel. So I'm now going to start my ink blending using the MFT Mini Cloud Edges stencil, and this is a really handy stencil. You've got the 4 different edges, so loads of different cloud patterns to work from, and of course you can flip the stencil as well and you get even more options that way. So for my ink blending today, I'm using Distress Oxides, I'm using Kitsch Flamingo for my first 2 cloud lines at the top, and then I do Saltwater Taffy for the next 2, and I finish off with dried Marigold. It's a really pretty combination, and I do clean off my stencil in between and my brush as well, just to make sure that I don't contaminate any of the ink colours on my panel. While I'm blending, and I have obviously sped this up a bit, it would be great if we could blend that quickly, wouldn't it? I am making sure to go right up to the edge of the circle each time I blend another cloud line. I really want that circle to be defined when I remove the masks. And now we're going to remove the stencils. This bit of the process never gets old for me. I absolutely love removing a mask after I've done some blending, and even after all these years I still enjoy seeing the end result. Now to step up the design a little bit, I thought I would do some dry embossing. So this will give the circle a little bit more definition, and I'm taping down a circle die, and I'm going to run that through my die cutting machine with the embossing mat. I'm using a big shot, and I've got tab 1, the bottom plate, then the embossing mat, the cardstock and die, and then the top plate. So obviously your sandwich might be different depending on which machine you use, but that will give me a really nice dry embossed circle around the ink blended circle. It's a small detail and it really doesn't take much time to do. It's something that I forget to do, and I'm trying to remind myself to dry emboss more often, as I really like the final look. So we're going to go ahead now and pull our card together. I've already added my blended panel onto a top folding A2 note card, and I'm now just removing the backing tape from the foam tape on the back of the images, and I'm just going to start placing those down. And full disclosure here, I usually have a pretty good idea of where my design is going. I do prep for my videos every single time. I'm not a wing it card maker at all. I wish I was, life would be quicker, but I have to often draft my cards. I maybe don't do the colouring or the ink blending, but I definitely stamp images out, cut them out, and I play around with a design before I come to the point where I want to make the final card. And that's often even without filming as well. I'm not one of those people that can just throw a card together. I wish I was, but let me know in the comments if you craft that way, whether you're one of those lucky people that can just pull a card together and it look fabulous. I'm just adding on some embellishments here. These are the Meraki Sparkle Fairy Gardens. So I'm just adding a few of those around the birds and the sentiment. And that brings me almost to the end of the card. But as I was looking at the final card, I noticed a little bit of red that had come outside of the line on the heart. So I'm just taking a white gel pen and I'm going to go over that and hide that. And because I couldn't leave well enough alone, I also decided to add some shimmer and sparkle onto the heart and the little leaves with a clear sparkle pen. But that brings us to the end of today's card and video. I do hope you've enjoyed seeing that come together. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I have listed the supplies in the description below and over on my blog, but I will be back next week with another card and another video for you. In the meantime, I hope that you have a wonderful day.